Hi. Tony's right. I like look at that all the time. My cat like busted the shit out of my like blinds, and I'm just like, I just don't feel like getting new ones. Anyway, oh my god, like I just don't feel like it, and I'm just like spiraling in life in general. So it's like, oh god, like I just yeah no. So this video is about me. It's kind of like an update to the poetry reviewer type thing and how it's going, and then what it's kind of taught me in terms of like reading poetry and then like writing it, kind of. So a poetry reviewer. I like reached out to like a company that has like a bunch of books that they kind of like do reviews for. So they do reviews for like nonfiction, fiction, poetry, and I was looking into something else, and they needed experience, and this one didn't specify experience. I basically told them I was like, I am a novice, but I'm a second year like MFA student, so I'm interested in like poetry and stuff like that. And they were like very kind and gracious and allow me to be a poetry reviewer. And so that's what I've been. So since January of this year, 2025, I've been a poetry reader. Now I got the book in like January, and I did not submit that fucking review until like February. like it took me like just a minute to get through, and it wasn't like bad or anything like that. It was just like I kept stalling. What I think about me is like I will procrastinate a lot because I have a lot of anxiety. I need to like get through that because it's like, girl, like you be like not doing bills and shit because of that, and I'm like now. In addition to assignments, like shit, some real heavy hard hitting stuff. So yeah, like it just like I gotta do better. So I like eventually like wrote it and then submitted it, and because I put a deadline on myself, and I told them, I sent it to them, and they were like really like gracious about it and stuff like that. So but you don't want to like they gave an inch and you took a mile, and then like they're just like, girl, like no, like you got too much going on for you to for like deal with you. Because I'm just chaotic. I'm like all over the place. And if you like know me really well, like you know that I'm really all over the place. Um, I feel like people can get the vibe, but like you have to be like really in my life to like know just how like how like all over the place I really am sometimes. So yeah, so I submitted my first one. It's gonna be out in like May 2025, and I don't know when this upcoming one is gonna be released, but I was like, let the good times roll. So like after I submitted that one, I was thinking about it, and then I was like, well, I don't want this opportunity to kind of like end up being like one of those fading kind of like opportunities where like we just gradually like just stop communicating, and just like I just did that one review that one time. So I basically reached out to them and was like, are there any more titles to like review in a queue that like you want? Because I didn't know if they like, once you submit one, you gotta wait like 6 months to submit another one, or can you just keep doing it? And so it was just like basically you can just keep doing it. Like and it's just like, yeah, just let us know which ones you're interested in. So I went back on the website and I looked up a few, and I submitted my like top 3 or 4 that I was interested in, because I submitted a longer list, but like looking at the descriptions and reading the blurbs and stuff like that, I submitted a shortened list. And so I was like, okay, cool, let me just like go ahead and do that. So they reached out to one of the people on my list, and yeah, they sent me the book. And so the book is here, and I won't let you guys know until I think I'm gonna do like I'm gonna wrap up the semester and then let you guys know what I review and then like link it or whatever. But yeah, like I like it. So now this is my second one that I'm reviewing, and I'm so excited because it's just like, wow, like I went out there and I like marketed myself, and it like paid off, bitch. It paid off. It's not, and it didn't pay off, isn't it? Like money paid off, but it like paid off, and then I got this opportunity because now I can like add that, and I know what it is like to review poetry now, and I know um I have a like tangible like product now at the end of the process. So if anybody does ask me like, do you have experience doing it? Not much, but here's something that actually I produced, and the, once it's live, it's live and you can go see it. So yeah, so this video is going to segue into kind of what I learned, kind of like making my first review, and what it taught me as a poetry reader and a poetry writer. And so doing my first review it was scary, because when you read reviews and stuff like that, it seems like they're so articulate, and it seems like they have like a PhD in like classics or PhD in literature, and they can like they seem like they can talk about literature on a level that like is like slightly beyond the layperson, but it's in such a way that like it just feels like it's just universes away. And I just struggle, I think, to articulate what I was like thinking, and I tried to. And that's also why I had a bunch of anxiety, because I was just like, how am I going to like frame this? How am I going to write this? And then for me, he was like, whoever, the editor and stuff like that, they're like, at least 800 words, which doesn't seem like a lot, especially when you start to get going. But when you don't have any ideas, 800 words seems like 80 fucking thousand. And so I'm like struggling. I'm like, oh my God, like, can I do this? Can I like write this? Like, am I gonna like this enough to write it, or what do I want to say? Because I don't want to like trash any book or anything like that. Like, the things that the things I had critiques of, I did mention in the review. But it wasn't like, I give this 1 out of 10, like type thing. I'm not doing that for the reviews. It's just like, it's worth exploring. This is what I found. This is what I critiqued, etc. And so, yeah. So I was able to meet the word goal, but I definitely know that it's intimidating to kind of like, you try to like write a review that like is your point of view, but not word it as though it's like you're talking to a girlfriend about this book. You want it to kind of be a little bit academic or interpretive. Like, you want to like put on that hat that you have to put on usually when you're doing academic kind of stuff, even though this is a review, and it's not really that deep, but like poetry does have like people who study it, like really like legit study it as a form of like, I want to say literature, but like kind of like they study it very seriously, and people make their dissertations on different forms of poetry and different poets and poetic eras and what poetry means in the larger like social construct of media or literacy or whatever. And you kind of just like can feel the weight of that a little bit when you do it, because like reviews like really do play a part in that dissemination of like information about books. And yeah, like, and I find even on YouTube, if you make a YouTube book review, the better ones do kind of wrestle with like concepts, and they go beyond like, I like this or I don't like this. They do try to like make a contextual analysis of it, the linguistic analysis of it, stuff like that. So I really kind of was struggling, like do I sound dumb like writing this? Do I sound like I didn't read it at all? Like, that was another thing. I didn't want to be like, somebody read it like, this bitch did not read this shit, like, because like poetry sometimes like everything's up to interpretation and shit like that, and then like some stuff is like concrete, like it's like, girl, like this shit really did happen, but I just didn't want to sound dumb. I'm gonna be real, like I still have those kind of fears. But yeah, so that's kind of where I was struggling, and then how it helped me as a reader is that so I'm definitely able to pick out, and not necessarily like if it's a sonnet or a villanelle or a tonka or whatever. It's not that, but I kind of can start to see how you're constructing poems and how that construction leads to like readability, lack thereof, it can aid in the meaning or obscure the meaning of what you're trying to say. I, can read it and I feel like I can start to, in my mind, make little critiques about maybe it should have a line break here, maybe the stanza should have been like this, etc., etc. And so I was able to kind of like start to explore structure, because I also was introduced to someone who like used poetry a little bit differently than I yeah like a little bit differently. I think they structured it just a little bit. I wouldn't consider this person's style, like the first person I reviewed, as like really experimental, but I kind of just, like it's their style. You kind of start to notice people, their style and what they're doing. So I was kind of like, okay, cool. And then in terms of the poetry collection, understanding things like title, does that play into like the interpretation of the work? Does it juxtapose an idea that's presented within it? Is it like, does it condescend? Does it agree? Does it flow with? These are things that you like ask yourself, right? Because sometimes you'll read a poem and it's like John's Pancakes, and then it's about like aesthetic cancer, and you're like, damn, what the fuck? Like, where did we take this left-hand turn? Like, bro, like, we were just talking about John's Pancakes, and now it's like, yeah, like, he has 2 months to live, and he smoked a cigarette to forget his worries or some shit. I don't know. Anyway, but, like, you kind of like, what? So, like, reading about titles and understanding stuff and, kind of like what it's about, and then like checking your assumptions about what you think it's going to be about. And I think I'm going to do a review of the Wild Iris, because that poetry collection blew me. It's like in a good way, but like also kind of like what. So yeah, it's like titles and stuff like that. And then like as far as sequencing goes, like why you start your collection why you start your collection a certain way and why you end it a certain way, and then like how you put everything in between together, and like do you make it into like parts, right? Do you break it up into like themes? Do you make like an intensity? Are you technically kind of telling a story, and then you're sequencing it in a way that's like more like narrative? Those are the things I started to pick up like in reviewing, and it's a good skill to have, because when you want to make your own poetry collection, damn, homie died. It's Murder, She Wrote on the screen. They like play reruns, so I saw this episode like 3 hours ago. So yeah, but learning the sequence stuff, putting in order, why you're putting in order, and then like kind of being able to not tell the intentionality, but kind of understanding like, was this, kind of being able to ask the question, was this intentional or not, and interrogate that like kind of earnestly, and being able to interrogate it earnestly because you're actually paying attention, and understanding that for your own work, especially for me, since I have to go into thesis, wanting to make the strongest work possible, it's like you don't want to front load all the good poetry, you don't want to backlog the good poetry, you want to put it throughout, but you want each piece to like work together if it's going to be read one after the other. And especially if it's like these pieces are in dialogue or conversation with each other, like how do you best put them together so that this dialogue is asking the questions or leading the reader down the path that you want them to, and not necessarily like explicitly like knocking them over the head with what's supposed to be happening, but like will 8 out of 10 people be able to say that like you sequence it in a way that felt the most impactful? Yes or no? And it's a matter of taste, but like some people, like I feel like they hit the mark and how people miss the mark because they're not intentional. And that's another thing, bringing intentionality into what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's like not just the intentionality of each poem individually, like stanza by stanza, line by line, word by word, whatever, is like actually like as a whole, like does this fucking work? Like as a whole body of work, does this work? Does this make sense? And it's not even like makes sense like you have to grasp all the content and context and all the information associated with it, but like does this make sense in terms of like collection? And that's another thing about a collection is like reading it. I like reading it and then reading like the Wild Iris. There was like 2 poems in there that I was just like, should this have gone in here? Because it references like something that's completely outside of like the world that they had built a little bit, and I was like, maybe this shouldn't be in here, like as a critique, like maybe this shouldn't be in here. Well, Louise, look, she's like dead, so like she's like, fuck it, I don't care. You know, it's like she made it like 10 years ago or something. Made this like 10 years ago. Anyway, so yeah, so you start to kind of notice that kind of stuff. And so for me, writing poetry, it kind of take away like being more intentional and sequencing and understanding that sequencing like matters when you're making a collection, right? Because this is what people are buying into. They're buying into a collection. It's not a singular poem. It's not like, you know, half a poem. It's not like half a collection or whatever. It's like a full collection of work. Even if it's a chapbook, like thematically, does this work? Or does this work linguistically? Are you being consistent and parallel with like, you know what I'm saying? Like, can each poem be kind of like, oh, that's a poem that Toni wrote, like, for this collection. Like, I know that that's her, or that will it sound like someone else? You know what I'm saying? So it made me more conscious of writing. Not that you have to, like, write about the same thing or whatever, but, like, or write in the same style for every, like, poem or every story or whatever you're doing. But, like, can people start to, like, as they read your work, start to notice that it's you? Like, are you coming through enough in your work? You know, even though the topic could be, like, totally, like, fucking wild, but, like, will people know that that's you? Or will they think it's someone else? And I'm not saying, like, oh, they think it's, like, a famous writer, but it's just, like, you know, as you go on to like want to sell books and stuff like that, like, will people be able to be like, oh, this person is very distinct, and that's a good reason to like follow them, or that's a good reason to like read their stuff because they're very distinct and they have an intentionality about like proving or getting to the point of what they're trying to do within their writing that I want to like stick around and like deal with, you know? So it made me think about writing a lot more, and that it really is an exercise, and your first collection is just your first collection. You'll go on to do other stuff, but like you want to make a good impression with your first collection, but like also it's just like poetry at the level that you're at right now. And in 10 years, if you continue with poetry or whatever you're doing, like prose or nonfiction or whatever, even things like art, music, like that time period, like you eventually, the collection will teach you that like you have to let it go, because either you're gonna like keep it to yourself and like no one's gonna look at it, or people are gonna look at it and like you just be open to criticism and praise, but like, you know, also criticism. And you have to kind of like let control a little bit, like go of control a little bit, to kind of like understand that and receive that kind of like messaging, and then go for it and like live your life or whatever. And so it's been a pretty good experience doing review, because like I said, all these things that I've started to kind of notice and take in, and I want to kind of like focus on this kind of stuff. And yeah, it informs my writing, because now I'm looking for different things. So when I go to talk about it, it's in a coherent fashion, and then writing about it, learning about making it line by line, word per word, stanza by stanza, whatever. But that this is one piece in a larger whole, and that the larger whole has to be kind of like tight, you know? The poem's got to be tight individually, but like the whole piece of work has to be tight thematically, or just like any sort of intention of putting this together. Why are you putting it together? Are you putting it together just because you like it, or does it like actually work for what we're doing here? And so yeah, So that's all I gotta say about that. I will try to post more videos, and I might be throughout the week because this is a spring break week, or I might just go ahead and batch the videos and talk a bunch of videos and put them up on just Monday. We'll decide. Because I tend to be sporadic from other channels, so I can maybe like loosen the reins for this one a little bit. But yeah, so that's all I had to say about that. I'm kind of like going like because I'm kind of tired. I've been up since like 8-ish, and so it's time for me to like go to bed because I've been up technically like 24 hours almost. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.